Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have with us Mr. Darnell Weathersby as our guest today. We will be talking about the impact that Black men can have in our community. And before we get into the conversation, I'll share just a brief about Mr. Weathersby, and I will have him share with you more in depth about himself. So Mr. Weathersby is currently an assistant principal at Plainfield North High School. And again, Mr. Weathersby, welcome to the Black Male Impact. But again, I should tell the people, my name is Richard A. Cross, and we're looking forward to having a great conversation today. Mr. Weathersby.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Cross. It's just been a pleasure to see your work from a distance and finally get a chance to connect. So many times as Black men, we have a chance to either collaborate or compete. We've had conversations previously where if you're looking to empower Black men and I'm looking to empower Black men, why don't we join and unite and collaborate and find creative ways within both our spheres of influence to motivate and encourage Black men and empower Black men. So thank you again for the opportunity to be on this platform to do just that tonight.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And you're right. To make the impact that we want, we can reach more by working together. And
Yes.
That's one thing that we need to do more of going forward, so we can have a bigger reach, so we can help change the narrative and the paradigm, the mindset, so we can actually achieve the things that we are capable of achieving. So, Mr. Weathersby, thanks again for being here on the Black Male Impact. Man, we're going to get straight.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're going to get straight into the conversation. So I'm
do
going
it.
to start with these questions that just to get your insight and see what we need to do and how we can make a greater impact. So my first question to you, what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
I think a lot of times I always say it's telling your whole journey, telling your whole story. A lot of times people see individuals like you and I, and they see the refined version of us.
Yes, sir.
But I think we have the best chance to impact the next generation more specifically by telling them the journey in which we've gone through to arrive where we're at today. They need to see the rough times. They need to see the obstacles that we've overcome. They need to see the hardships that we've successfully navigated. So when they see us with the master's degrees and the PhDs and the Lord blessing our spheres of influence, they understand he was once in my shoes.
Yeah.
And now look at him. Now look at how he's thriving. And they pay attention to the journey when they see that we've had to overcome some things. So I think sometimes the positive mindset is saying, I'm grateful and I'm thankful, not because of just where I'm at, but all go through to get where I'm at. So, yeah.
I think that's a great perspective, especially to connect with the next generation, because you're right. Sometimes they see us all dressed up,
Right,
as if we never been through anything, and they may be reluctant and coming to us and talking to us and sharing with us, not knowing that we've been there. And see, right. So that's a great way to make sure we can connect by sharing not just the successes, but the adversities that we have overcome to be where we are. So that's a great mindset to have, just to have the understanding that people see us sometimes don't know what we've been through to be where we are. And I know that you are in the teaching space, education.
Yes.
What does that look like on a day-to-day for you as a Black man?
Well, it's funny. This is year 19 for me in education, 7 years as a teacher. This is my 12th year as an administrator. My first 10 years in education were in CPS and in Harrisburg area out in Pennsylvania. All urban ed, majority 90, 95% African-American, Hispanic, minority. and God used me in powerful ways in that space. I got my master's from Temple University in 2010. And when I
Congratulations.
transitioned to an administration for the last 12 years or so, I've had the opportunity, I call it my mission field, in predominantly suburban environments where they don't see us much at all. Most of the school districts I've worked over the last 12 years, I've been either the only or the first African American male administrator in that district or in the school that I'm currently at. So I've had the unique opportunity to blaze that trail to show both my minority students and my Caucasian students what Black excellence looks like in the educational space for the last 12 years. So it's definitely a blessing to just be a member of the community. The kids can see me at the grocery store. The kids can see me worshiping at church. The kids can see me out to eat with my family. So they get to see holistically who is Mr. Weathersby, and the fact that there's I pray, a form of consistency from who they see at work to who they see at Walmart to who they see at church. And they see that he truly loves the community, he truly loves his wife, truly loves his children, and cares about each and every one of his students. So those are some things I get a chance to do and bring to the table as an educator in
Man,
society.
that is powerful right there. Not just being that you're in the space and you're doing it, but you said you're consistent in all those areas. Whatever you do in one area, you model the same principles in the next area. And that is important because we're always having people watching us, sometimes
Definitely.
unknowingly to us, the people that are watching and trying to learn from us. So it's
Yeah.
good to be consistent, not just in one area, but be the same example in all areas. So that is great. And congratulations for your 19 years as an
Yes, thank
educator.
you.
Yes, because I know it has been a drive to have more Black men in
Yes,
education. So seeing you can be an inspiration for somebody else to join the
definitely.
cause to make a difference. So my next question to you, what do you have for the men listening? What
Yeah.
advice do you have for the men listening on how they can play a role in creating positive change?
A lot of times we live in a world where they compare platforms. Oh, he's reaching 10,000 people. He's reaching 100,000 people. I always say be faithful within the sphere of influence that you have in your current season. As Black men, we don't have to compete. We don't have to compare. There are people in your sphere of influence who may never meet me. There are men in my sphere of influence who may never meet you. And I always say, be faithful to those God has entrusted to you. And so whether it's 5 men, pour into those 5 men. Be an example for those 5 men. Let your light shine for those 5 men and do the best you can. And as he increases your platform and your sphere of influence, he can trust you to be faithful in that. So for those who are listening, don't get caught up in the numbers. Don't get caught up in the social media likes. Don't get caught up in how many people you're mentoring, whatever that might be. Just make each relationship count. And if you do that, the numbers will take care of itself. But I think the thing that warms my heart the most over my 19 years in education is I'm at the season of my career now where some of my students are current husbands, and now they're fathers, and now they're pillars in their community, reflecting on words of wisdom that I shared with them when they were freshmen through seniors in high school, and now they're mentoring people. So that's what gets me worked up. That's what gets me excited, is to see that process of mentorship and discipleship being replicated from one generation to the next. So I would just say, if you're able to surround yourself with young men, or just men in general who want to grow, who want to learn, who are willing to be held accountable. That's definitely another attribute that I think has blessed my life and my career, is I'm consistently surrounded by men who can care less about my titles, who can care less about my degrees, but say, man, Darnell, I'm going to make sure you're, once again, consistent in every facet of your life. And I care enough to ask you the tough questions to ensure that you're a man of integrity, both when the spotlight is on you and when the spotlight is not on you.
Man, that is powerful. That's a lot. And the listeners, I hope that you were taking notes. And if you weren't taking notes, you can just repeat, just rewind this part and listen again to what Mr. Weathersby just said, because it's important. Because a lot of times we get caught up in the how many we're serving and not realizing that we're supposed to serve well those we have right now, so we can, because sometimes it's a preparation and see if you're good to store what you have, because if you can't store the little, how are you going to store a lot? So it's important that we take advantage of what we have right now and do the best we can, because, and if that's all we're going to be doing, that's it. We want to make sure we use it, or we serve as much as we possibly can in that space. So that is really, really important, especially when we're talking about making a difference, especially when we're talking about making an impact, because we can't wait as I'm going to do the work when I have 5,000 people or 10,000 people. We must do the work, even when we have no people, because somebody's watching.
No doubt about it.
Yes, sir. I really appreciate that feedback. So my next question to you, and I could easily ask, a follow-up question from that, but let me continue. How can we as Black men help to change the narrative today? And I will say this, because someone mentioned it to me in one of the conversation, which we having violence against each other. But that's not the only thing that we need to change. But how can us as Black men help to change the narrative? And you can choose what area you want to change, you want to focus on.
So my heartbeat outside of education, when it comes to mentoring as a whole, I have a deep passion pouring into lives of either new fathers or young fathers, either new husbands or young husbands. So that demographic that says, I've been married for 5 years or less, or I have children who are 5 years old or less. My heart truly goes out to empower them and equip them to break generational cycles of divorce so that they can be the example within their family lineage for generations to come. So that's where I think that's one of the fastest ways to change the narrative, if you will, because society makes it look like we're scared of commitment. Society will make you feel like we don't take care of our families, we don't raise our children, when that's just a lie. I know so many Black men just celebrated 17 years of marriage by the grace of God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I want to be able to let society know that that's becoming the norm, not the exception. Black men love their wives. Black men love their children. Black men don't flee from commitment. We run towards it. That's the narrative I want society to see is Black men are not what is projected on BET. Black men are more than what's projected on the music awards or the whatever media outlet. We're more than that. So I'm just excited to be that example and to empower the next generation to also be that example with pride and with boldness, unapologetically showing the world that we are good husbands and we are good fathers and good providers and good examples in our community. We live lives worth replicating.
And that is awesome, because of course the media sometimes show us something different than what is actually happening within our communities. And the more it's talked about, the positive things, the more the next generation can see and hear that some of the things that they are hearing are just false. They're not the truth. And where they don't have to think that's what's the norm. So the more it is shared and the more it is talked about, the positive things, the more it will influence the next generation. So that's great. And man, and continue to be in that example and champion cause that will definitely make a difference within our community. Because we can't allow the false narrative to continue. And no one is going to change it for us. We got to change it for ourselves. So, and great response. So my next question to you is what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path you're on? Being that you're an educator, who
Yeah.
influenced you or who you were inspired by to becoming an educator?
I got to give a shout out to my sixth grade teacher, Mr. Washington. It's been so many years since we've talked, but if you're watching this, I owe my career to you. Every day in sixth grade, Mr. Washington came to work clean. He had on the suit and tie. He had on the matching gaiters. He had the Jerry curl right. He was just doing it. And he was a man that demanded respect, but he presented himself in such a way that I was like, I want to be that to my students one day. So, I dress in my shirt and tie every day because Mr. Washington showed me that a Black man can do it. So much love to Mr. Washington. Much love to Mr. Backstrom, Lane Tech High School, Chicago, Illinois. Fathered so many young men like myself who didn't necessarily have that parental fatherly figure. So much love to Mr. Backstrom once again, who mentored and cultivated so many men to be quality husbands and fathers. And I know he did some of it intentionally, but I think the depth of his impact, I wanted to give a shout out and give him his flowers now. My life has been forever changed because you were in my life in those critical 4 years in high school. So those are just two examples of Black men who played a very formative role in how I approach touching the lives of other students and impacting the community.
Okay, being that you say that, so just listening to your response, I see that you value mentoring because almost your answers mirror being a mentor.
Yes,
So you consider those gentlemen your mentor in your earlier years in school.
definitely, directly or indirectly. Also want to give a shout out to my former youth pastor, Pastor Darrell Smith, and my former pastor, Andy Zavornovich. I always say I'm the product of a single mother who loved me enough to do what was ever necessary to keep her 8 kids out of jail
Wow.
and off the streets. And I'm a product of the men of the church who stepped in and said, Miss Weathersby, we're not gonna let your children go by the wayside. And the men of the church stepped up and stepped in and bridged the gap for me and my siblings in particular, in a very critical time for us, for myself in junior high and high school and college, and just being that reflection once again, showing me in a real hands-on way what it meant to be a man. So I got to give much love to the men of New Hope Bible Church as well.
That is powerful. And Black men, as you have heard, you can be the example. You can help a young man see beyond his current situation because sometimes
Yes.
that's what it takes for them to realize their own potential and the impact they'll later have in the world. So,
Yeah.
man, Black men, we have to be the leaders, be the examples, and help the next generation realize their own potential. It's on us
Yeah.
to be the leaders for the next generation, man. That's powerful right there, what you just shared, because sometimes we overlooked people who have really guided us and who have inspired us and who have influenced us because we didn't just make it here. Someone.
Not at all.
Yes,
Not
sir.
at all.
That's right. Someone shared something valuable to us where
Yeah.
we picked up and say, you know what, maybe my life don't have to be what statistics have been saying.
Right.
As we know, sometimes all those statistics are not right. But we can easily go off track if we don't have guidance and someone at times to show us the way. Because
Agreed.
especially when you're growing up, you may not know all you need to know. So
Right.
you can step into your own greatness. But I will ask this question, during the COVID, how did that affect you and your role with your students?
It was difficult. I think there's a term in education called social emotional learning. And I think while I understood that concept prior to COVID, I think this pandemic helped all educators, and I know myself in particular, understand the holistic makeup of our students and staff, to understand that families of students and families of staff were all being impacted in ways that were hard to quantify, that were hard to put on a data sheet or a spreadsheet. Parents were health were struggling. My own father passed not of COVID, but during COVID. So
My
um,
condolence.
no, thank you for that. But I think it played a real way to help me see if as a husband and as a father, my staff are not immune to that. My students aren't immune to that. So I think it gave me a much more refined form of compassion and empathy for my students to say, how can I support you? How can I encourage you and hold you accountable? But at the same time, see you for the multi-layered, multifaceted individual that you are. So I think that's the one thing that I was able to take away from that pandemic is how can I love on my students and love on my staff in a way that impacts them outside of the classroom, outside of the school building, so that when they do come back to work, when they do come back to school, they feel supported and empowered and encouraged to pursue excellence each and every day. So that it helped me do that better, if that answers your question.
Well, that's great because I know, the pandemic have really affected teachers and students a lot
Yeah,
more than we have thought. Being that some of the things that I've read, although myself was in the school system, but I know students that didn't have certain resources really
right.
affected them and stuff like that. So I just wanted to show that in there just to give some perspective and stuff like that. But I want to ask this question. I know you have said the black male teachers who have really inspired you and influenced you, but
Yep.
what was one pivotal moment in your life? When did you know that you wanted to do this, or did something happen during your earlier years
Yeah.
that you would consider a pivotal moment, and that you say, what, giving back or become someone of service will be my pursuit?
So it's funny you bring that up. I work in the high school level, preparing kids for secondary education and beyond. But when I went off to school at Trinity University in Deerfield, Illinois, I was going in as a music major. I love music. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna study music and I'm gonna teach music. But I don't know how to read music. So my first semester in college, I was flunking all my music classes. And I remember the dean of education, much love to Carol Kennett, Dr. Kennett, who pulled me to the side and she was like, Darnell, have you ever considered being a teacher? I've watched you around campus and I'm inspired by how comfortable you are in front of people. Have you ever considered being a teacher? So it wasn't even on my radar, but God and his sovereignty will allow individuals to come alongside of you and speak life into you when you don't even know how to speak it into yourself in a particular season. So much love to Dr. Kennett, who saw it in me, spoke it into me, and the rest is history as far as taking my classes, getting my undergrad degree, and being the man who I am today, all because she saw something and was obedient to speak to it.
Man, that is powerful. And now we're in the position, to
Yes,
see in others what they may not see in themselves.
yes,
Um, because we don't know how God is going to use us each day. And when we have that prompting, we need to, especially working with young people that
yes,
sometimes doesn't have the guidance that or the support to help them to see beyond their current
right.
situation.
Yeah,
Now we are entrusted to be that light, to
yes,
speak life into our young people. And it not just young people, because sometimes even adults may not realize what they're supposed to do, their purpose. So we can
agreed,
also
agreed.
share with whoever we are having a conversation. If you feel compelled to share an insight or what you think the person should do, might just go go ahead and share it. But I
Yeah,
really love that perspective because a lot of times when you hear stories, you find people share that somebody said, man, you
yes,
need to pursue that, and that you will do great in that area.
yes,
And but not
yes.
only did she spoke it and tell you, but you were willing, and that's the powerful part.
No,
Your
thank you.
willingness to go forth and do that which the person saw in you.
Yeah,
And so it was great that the person said, because a lot of times people hear they need to do, but sometimes they refuse to follow through.
yeah,
And what could have made their lives better and make them have a more greater impact on the world.
yes,
So you
yes.
taking the initiative after you were told really is so, I would say, powerful, but not really powerful. But it's a different. We're going to keep it at powerful. But
No,
no,
I
but
appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, it's really important that sometimes if we're going to walk into our purpose, when we are told or guided, we need to take those bold steps. We learn what we need to on the way. So sometimes don't worry about not knowing what
Right.
all you need to know. Just take the steps, and each step,
That's it.
you'll get
One
stronger.
step at a time, one day at a time. Yes.
That's right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So my next question to you is, what life lesson have you
Mm,
learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit this current generation? So what life lesson you learned late
yeah.
and you think is beneficial for this generation?
Man, I think when it comes to speaking life into others and investing in others and the reward that comes with that that can't be quantified through money. I think in this season of my life, I get more joy out of seeing others succeed than I do out of my own successes. Like when yeah, for example, I mentor some young men who they say, "Oh, I'm dating a young lady, Mr. Weathersby, and I think it's getting serious. What should I do?" And I get to walk them through that journey to how do you propose and what's a good proposal and how to be romantic. And okay, now I'm married, Mr. Weathersby. How do I make it work? And they get to see my marriage from a distance, and they get to see how I continually try to date my wife and love my wife and support my wife. And as a result of them being in that inner circle, they hopefully and prayerfully get a chance to say, okay, I've seen some examples and some potential templates of how to do this thing called life. And now I get to flesh it out for myself. So I think that's what excites me most in this season, to see the young men that I mentor now raising their children, and prayerfully some word of wisdom that I've given them or some example that I've lived out in front of them. They now say, hey, this model of what it means to be a husband works. This what it means to be a father works. This model of what it means to be a pillar in the community works. So I think that's the part that gives me most joy in this season, is seeing other young men be successful and thrive and grow. And I would be remiss if I didn't kind of give a shout out to my company, Lead One LLC. My wife and I started it in 2013 with the understanding that every person has a sphere of influence. Every individual has an opportunity to maximize that sphere of influence and empower those in their sphere of influence. So we get to travel the country. I'm speaking at workshops and seminars and being keynote speakers at different organizations and events, with the main premise of saying, so many times society would tell you you're a leader when you have a degree and when you have a cool title. And what we're saying is you're a leader today because you have a sphere of influence today. So for those of you who might be interested in learning more about Lead One and what we do, feel free to check out our website, theleadonemovement.com. And on that website, you can see a plethora of resources from my book, Journey to Fatherhood, dedicated to young husbands and young fathers. As also, we have apparel on our website to just encourage people to break generational curses. So the apparel says the cycle ends with me. So men across the country, we have fitness apparel, things of that nature, just encouraging men, encouraging husbands, encouraging wives, encouraging mothers to say, whatever hardships I've had to endure, that generational curse ends with me, and I will speak life and victory and freedom into the next generation. So that's my heartbeat. That's my passion to do that with any area that I have an opportunity to.
Well, I was about to tell you to tell them where can they find your information and support
Yeah.
what you're doing. So you went into my head and said, I'm going to, but that's great. I'm also going to put the link somewhere here that they can
Thank you.
also find it and support you and the work that Mr. Weathersby is doing is important.
Thank you so much.
So please give him your support, and because that's how we're going to make a difference in our community. The work that needs to be done will not be done by one person. We need as many people to do the work that is needed to make a tremendous difference, as that's what the platform is about inspiring positive change. And
Yeah.
each person will come with something different that will make a difference community. So Mr. Weathersby, thank you for sharing that. And listeners,
Thank you.
yes. And listeners, you're listening to the Black Male Impact, where change is inspired. So before we go, and I want to ask Mr. Weathersby one more question.
Yeah.
What impact do you want to have on the world?
I always say I want to impact one household at a time. I want to impact one husband, one wife, one son, one daughter, one student, one household at a time. And I think when my days are done, and they say, what did he do? He inspired others. He empowered others. He motivated others to reach their fullest potential. Whether that's with the hat of being a principal, whether that's inspiring my son and daughter, whether that's inspiring those in my community, those in my church, those that I get to minister to in whatever capacity, I want to consistently be known as a person who had a desire to make sure that others lived out their fullest potential so that they could impact those within their sphere of influence. So if I'm able to empower and equip others, I'm in my sweet spot. I'm in my zone. And that's when I'm most filled with joy, is when I see others thriving.
And that's awesome. And one of my mentor who will be also a guest here, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, he said, the service we provided to others is the rent for our time on earth. So always be
Yes.
of service, because that's what it's about. That's what that's what is left behind once
Yes.
we're no longer here. So the impact that we have on others. So that is great. And Mr. Weathersby, man, thank you for this conversation. I hope the listeners have gained some insights and perspective. Well, I know I'm not going to hope. I know they do. And if they don't, they can go back and replay and start from the top. But again, man, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. We really appreciate it. I know the Black Male Impact will continue, and we're looking forward to having another conversation in the future,
Yes.
maybe about different topics, but it's still going to be about how to make a difference within our community. Listeners, thanks for being with us. This is Richard A. Cross. And again, we're here on the Black Male Impact. Mr. Weathersby, thank you.
Thank you so much.